It has been an amazing day, I have to say. And we are ready to start. So we would like to welcome Urmila Prabhu, or Dr. Edith Best, who's going to be doing this session on well-formed plans. She has a doctorate in education and a master's in it. She's joined in Bhakti tradition in 1973. And she has lots of hands-on experience in education, different forms for different age groups, and has produced many books in that regard. One of her books that really captured my attention was Essence Seekers, just because I have like that need for fiction material. It's kind of like something that I really like. But she winds in the Bhakti philosophy so well in that book that it's really one I would recommend for people to read. And she also strikes me as the type of person who can slice and dice a topic open and give you deep insights into making it very practical. So those are the kind of things I really like about her presentations. And so today she's going to speak to us about well-formed plans, and I'll hand it over to Urmila. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. So I was thinking that this is kind of an ironic topic to do in a pandemic, because the main feature of my life right now is that I can't make any plans. So it's quite interesting. Of course, we can make plans, just on perhaps a little smaller and different level than we normally make. But this is a formula. It's a 5-part formula, and it always works. What I suggest that you all do, and I guess Bhakti Yoga Durham means that there's a lot of people there that I can't see individually. Is that how that works?
You can see them individually. You should have it up on your screen. There's different squares.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, there's about, how many of us in here now? I'll tell you. There's about 40 of us in here.
Okay, great. Great. Nice to see you all here. Yes. Oh, Mukundandri. Nice to see you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. I do look forward to producing that book and launching it in South Africa whenever they're going to let me in the country.
Yes, we're working on it.
Hare Krishna. Okay. So what I suggest that you do as we go through this is really a workshop, not a seminar. And I strongly suggest that you work with some practical plans as we're going through this. So don't just take this as theoretical. When I was taught this, I was taught it in 21 hours. So we did 21 hours of workshop, all different plans. We did group work where somebody else would present a plan and we would give feedback to them. So I'm going to do my best that I can to do this over an internet connection in an hour. So there's 5 steps to having plans that work. And I think we can start off by saying that we all have experience of making plans that don't work. You know, all of us have experience, whether it's I want to do this or I don't want to do this, and it falls apart almost immediately, or after a week, or after 2 weeks. You know, there's the well-known New Year's resolutions that everybody takes out a gym membership on January 2nd, and, you know, by February, they're not going anymore. Or, you know, I'm not going to eat any more chocolate cake, and there you are with your 2 chocolate cakes in the fridge. So we have a tendency to make plans either for things we want to avoid or things we want to accept that don't work. But this system, it works. Now, of course, whatever we do in this world, there's always the Krishna factor. What do they say? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Right? There's always the Krishna factor, that he has to stamp it with approval and say, yep, that's what I want. What I have found very helpful in my life is to keep my goals flexible enough that if the process to get there is a little different, I can still go with it. All right, let's go through these steps. So the first thing is we have to know where we're going. We have to know what we want to achieve. And in Sanskrit, this is called our sankalpa. What is it I want to achieve? What's my goal? Right? And as they say, if you don't know where you're going, you probably won't get there. So many, many times, the reason our plans don't work is we don't have a clear idea of what we want. What are we trying to achieve? What is our goal? And it's amazing how often that is the case. A lot of times the problem is that we only know what we want to get away from. We don't know where we're going. You know, okay, I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be in Maya. Right? And the mind is a funny entity. You know, when Krishna says yam yam vapi swaram bhavam twajagante kalevaram, we get whatever we think about. That's just as true for an aversion as for an attachment. It's just as true for an aversion as for an attachment. Sometimes it's even stronger for an aversion. Like in the story of Chitraketu, it's explained that Chitraketu's son was his enemy in a previous life. It's funny, Chitraketu says that, he says, maybe this son who died young was my enemy in a previous life. Then the next purport, Prabhupada said, that was actually the case. That living entity was an enemy who thought, okay, if I take birth as his son and die young, that's a way I'll really be able to punish him.
Haribo.
And we have, to me, one of the heaviest stories in this regard is Amba. So Amba felt, rightly or wrongly, that Bhishma had offended her, that Bhishma had ruined her life, that he had taken her from her ceremony of choosing a husband. He had just carried her off. Now you're going to marry my brother. Well, I want to marry someone else. And the someone else said, nope, now that Bhishma took you, I'm not going to marry you. And she spent that rest of that life and the next 2 lives, so 3 lives altogether, she spent focus on vengeance against Bhishma. And even though she took birth in a time when Krishna and Balaram were walking around on the planet, and she could have developed, and later he could have developed a relationship directly with the Lord, that living being decided instead just to focus on, what do I don't want? I don't want Bhishma to live. All right, so we're going to do a little experiment right now. As I said, this is a workshop. So you can think about anything you like, just don't think about a blue elephant. Well, what happens? Right? Immediately we think about a blue elephant. So I'd like you right now to think of, what is it you want? What is it you want? So we're going to work on a plan today. And each of you, write down, if possible, please, what do you want? Now, if you find yourself writing it in the negative, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be arrogant. I want to stop being inattentive with my japa. You know, I want to stop offending devotees. I want to stop eating chocolate cake, whatever it is. Then ask yourself the question, what do you want instead? Now, ideally, when we do this in a group session, we have people share their plan with somebody else, and the someone else says if it's in the positive or the negative. So I'd like you to write it down, and then I'm going to ask some of you, we won't be able to go through everybody here, but I'd like to ask some of you to share, any of you who are willing, to share what your plan is, and then we're all going to see, is it in the positive? Is it stated in the positive? So take a couple minutes, write something, and it should be stated in the positive. This sounds really easy, but I've taught this to thousands of people, and many people end up writing it in the negative without realizing. Okay, I'm going to give you another minute for this.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So basically we need to write what our focus and plans are for future Krishna consciousness.
It can be for anything. It could be for your garden.
Okay, thank you.
It could be for your something to do with a relationship, with your career, with anything. Hopefully it's all related to Krishna somehow or other, yes. But it doesn't have to be specifically about your sadhana or anything like that, whatever you want. But please write some plan. And then any of you who feel that you've done, if you can, it's hard. I can't really see everybody at once. Okay, you've written in the chat window. That's a good idea. All right, so you can write in the chat window. Wake up at 4 a.m. at least. Okay, good, that's in the positives. That's a good idea. Instead of unmuting, if you just write it in the chat menu. Want to be healthy. Okay, good, that's a positive. Excellent. Somebody else. Excellent, increase my daily reading time. Okay, those are all positive. Very good, excellent. Somebody else. Whoever thought you, Alicia, who thought to write in the chat window. Yes, very good. Life of meaning, service, and joy. All right. Become more at peace with where I am in my life. Okay. Spend quality time with daughter. Those are positive. Natural, honest with myself. That's positive. Chant attentively. Okay. Manage my anxiety better. Want to be a pure devotee. All right. So far, these are all positive. I want to graduate. All right. These are positive. You don't have to share. If it's really personal, you don't have to share. As many of you are willing to share, that's good. Anybody else? Chant japa more, and I want to spend time with Krishna doing artik as well as grow my garden. Okay, for the purpose of this exercise, Maheshran, would you just pick one of them? You can work on all three of them, but for this exercise, just pick one that you want to work on. Anybody else? Exercise regularly. Okay, good. Spend time with Krishna. Okay, these are all positive. Excellent, excellent. Anybody else? Want to be happy. Okay, very good. Okay, anybody else? All right. Finish my japa before work. Okay, very nice. So for all these are positive, that is awesome. I mean, that is totally awesome. I've taught this so many times, and you usually have somebody who comes up with a negative inadvertently. All right. Now, we have this nice quote from Srila Prabhupada here that, and it's really interesting. Krishna is so funny. It's really interesting. I'm listening to a Prabhupada class pretty much every morning. And this morning, the class that I just listened to, it just happened to be the next class. Srila Prabhupada it was this class in Sanand, India in 1975. And so Prabhupada was saying this quote today. So that was really nice. If a person becomes a rich man, automatically his poverty has gone away. So a rich man does not require to endeavor separately to drive away poverty. So the concept there is that the negative things will automatically be taken care of if you go to the positive. So if you do the positive thing, automatically the negative's gone away. If you're more at peace, then you're not going to be angry. Now, when you work on this on your own, and by the way, this is a real life changer, this technique. When you work on this on your own, you'll sometimes find your mind saying things like, you know, I don't want to be angry, or I don't want to be proud, or I don't want to be so spaced out in my japa. And then you ask yourself, what do you want instead? Right? That's the mantra. You can say, what do you want, or what do you want instead? What do you want instead? And for example, when someone says, I don't want to be angry, there's a lot of possible insteads. There could be peace, there could be joy, there could be grateful. And it's not that everybody's going to have the same instead to a negative. All right, so all the ones I looked at were in the positive. Excellent. All right, now we're going to go to step 2. And I think this step 2 is particularly hard in our current pandemic situation. And that is, what can we control and influence? So if someone says, and none of you did this, but sometimes people say, well, I want my husband to be nice, or I want the temple president to stop doing this or that, or I want my boss to do this, or I want my kid to do this. And, you know, those are not things that we can control. They're not things that we can control. So let's say you want to have that. What you really would like to do is have your mother stop bossing you around. Then you have to make a plan about how you're going to change your dealings with your mother, because you can't make a plan for your mother. It just doesn't work. You know, people come to me all the time when I travel, if I ever travel again, but people come to me all the time when I travel asking personal advice. And a lot of the times they ask me to fix other people in their life. You know, can you fix my parents? Can you fix my husband, my wife, my kids? People will ask me, how can I make my kids do this? Or I remember one pujari, my head pujari, she said, how can I make all the pujaris be responsible? I said, you can't. You can't make anybody do anything. And that's not a plan. It simply won't work. So even if your plan is positive, if it involves that you want to change the behavior of another person, then the plan is likely to fail. Now, again, what you can do is you can change how you relate to the other person. So one very good example is this woman whose mother was always calling and complaining. The conversations were always completely negative. So the adult daughter thought, well, you know, I've asked my mother to stop being so negative, and it doesn't matter, she doesn't change. So she decided whenever her mother was going to be negative, she would be silent. And whenever her mother would say anything that was positive, she would respond very positively. So if her mother was saying, and she wouldn't say anything, or maybe she'd just go, And if her mother said, you know, oh, I went to the park today and I had a nice time. Oh, that was great. Wow, and what did you do there? And she would really respond to it. And within 2 weeks, her mother hardly said anything negative anymore. So we can influence people. We have quite a bit of influence over other people, but not directly. We only have some influence in how we behave. And I'm sure we've all experienced that there are some people we can't influence practically at all. So I've met certain people in my life that no matter how I deal with them, no matter how I respond to them, no matter how I proactively deal with them or not deal with them or avoid them or not avoid them or talk to them or don't talk to them or give them things or don't give them things, nothing changes. So there are some people that I simply cannot influence. But we want to make sure the plan is within our influence, right? Something that I have control over. So I didn't see all the plans I saw were all within influence, within our own influence. But if those of you didn't show me your plans, please look it over. Look over what you've written. Is that something within your influence or control? Or is your plan dependent on some action or attitude of somebody else that you can't control? Now, it may not necessarily be some particular individual. It may be some external circumstances that are beyond our control. Like right now in this pandemic, one of my personal biggest challenges is that all of a sudden, my area of influence and control has really narrowed and really shifted from what I'm used to my whole life. You know, I'm used to being able to say, well, you know, I'm going to buy a ticket for Durban. And then I'm pretty sure I'm going to get on the plane and go to Durban. And now, you know, I can't do that anymore. So there are things that are outside of my influence and control that don't have to do just with their individual people in my environment. So these two things, that our plan should be in the positive and with our own area of control, are absolutely necessary. If these two things aren't there, there's nothing else we can do to make the plans to work. If the plan is in the negative, we're likely to get the negative. Just like if I say, don't think of a blue elephant, you're going to think of a blue elephant. So if our plan is, you know, I don't want to be inattentive when I chant, I'm probably going to be inattentive when I chant. You know, I don't want to be proud. 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 Then we're going to get what we don't want. And as far as if it's not within our control, we're going to be very, very frustrated at trying to control other people. So if ever you make a plan for anything, those two steps are just absolutely essential. If you don't have them, stop. Go back. Go back. What's within my control, and how am I going to put it in the positive? What's within my control, and how am I going to put it in the positive? Not, you know, I want to get my kids to stop jumping on the couch. So that's negative, and it's not under my control. Now, I could say, when my kids jump on the couch, I am going to say, look at, instead of jumping on the couch, why don't you sit on the couch? I'll read you a book. So I can have, that's under my control, and it's in the positive. I want my kids to sit and read instead of jumping. By the way, these things are true when I'm communicating with others. And one of the most powerful aspects of the well-formed plan technique is you start realizing that if I'm going to talk to other people, I also want to suggest to them things that are in the positive and under their control. Instead of just saying, you know, would you stop talking so loudly? Okay, that's under their control, but what do I want them to do instead? Do I want them to be silent? Do I want them to talk more softly? What is it I want them to do? Do I want them to come into the same room as I'm in? You know, what do I want them to do instead? And I found that many times we don't even know what we want to do instead, or what we want someone else to do instead. And oftentimes we don't think about, is this really something that's under my control, or is this really something that's under the other person's control? All right, so this is just got to be there. And if we had a lot more time, we'd make a series of plans and test this out, and always make sure that those two were together. All right, we're going to go to step 3. Now, while everybody's plans that I looked at were positive and under their control, a lot of them didn't meet this criteria. We could call this the success description. So I'd say half of the plans that people put up were very vague. They were very vague. What does it mean? You know, what does it mean? I want to exercise more. What does that mean? So here I'm giving some examples. I want to be humble. I want to be organized. I want to be sincere. Or like someone said, I want to be with Krishna. You know, what does that mean? The problem is when we have a goal that's vague, then we don't know when we've achieved it. If I don't define humility, then I have no idea if I'm being humble or not. You know, it was really interesting when I joined the Hare Krishna movement. One of the things that was really, I don't know if this is still true, but that this was preached like that. But when I joined, one of the things that was really emphasized was that women should be chaste and faithful and submissive to their husbands. I don't know if that's quite as socially acceptable today. But anyway, at that time, it was a really strong thing. It was something that Prabhupada was saying a lot, and the ISKCON leaders were saying a lot. We heard it a lot in classes. And I got married very soon after I joined the Hare Krishna movement. So I had something in my own head as to what being a submissive, faithful, chaste wife meant. You know, well, it means I do this and this and this. And then at one point, the devotees were passing around this book by a Christian lady called Fascinating Womanhood, about how to be a good wife. And when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I realized that I was doing the opposite of the kind of things that would be effective. And one of the examples that she gives was if a man comes home from work and says, you know, it's really hard to make enough money. I just don't feel that I can support the family adequately. You know, I just don't feel like I earn enough. And the woman's trying to be supportive and submissive. And she says, well, you know, I bake our own bread and I sew our own clothes and I try to help out. You know, that saying that to the man basically said, yeah, you're right. You're not making enough money. And therefore I have to live in difficulty. And whereas if she said, oh, you know, you're such a hero going out and working for the family, that then he would feel supportive. And I read that and I thought, oh my goodness. You know, I didn't know what it meant to be supportive. Unfortunately, I mean, my mother was a very wonderful person, but not particularly good at being a wife. And I just thought, wow, you know, I didn't know what it looked like. What does it look like? What does it mean? Or you see, you know, devotees trying to be humble. One of the funniest things that I see in ISKCON is where we compete to who can be the most humble. You'll see this in the temple room where there's one mat to sit on, and each person is trying to give the mat to the other person. You know, I mean, it's sweet, but it's really quite humorous, and it's nice. But that's not the full measure of humility. Or what does it mean to be sincere? I mean, well, I should be a sincere devotee. Prabhupada talks a lot about being sincere. What does that mean? How would I know if I've achieved it? What's my evidence procedure that I would know, okay, I've actually achieved this. I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to be healthy. What does that mean? So the suggestion is to look at this in 3 areas. These are areas that Srila Prabhupada writes about in terms of the subtle body. Thinking, feeling, and willing. Thinking, feeling, and willing. So to say, okay, let's say that I've achieved my goal. And one thing you can do for this, it's kind of a little way you can trick the mind, is you pretend you've already achieved your goal. Now you can pretend that's 1 month from now, you know, it's the end of May, or you can pretend it's a year from now or 5 years, depending on what your plan is. But let's say, you know, let's say you pick a time. So each of you pick a time by which you hope this plan can be accomplished. And then you imagine that you're already there. So if I would give yourself at least a week for any plan. I would never try to put a plan into effect in much less than a week. But pick a date, a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now. It's already accomplished. And pretend, not that you're looking now into the future, but that you're in the future already. So you pretend, you know, it's June 30th, or it's November 10th, or whatever. It's you know, April 2021. You've accomplished your goal. And try to really get into that frame mentally. All right, it's now March 2021. My goal is accomplished. What would I be doing? What am I doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing And notice if our attention is focused more on my internal thoughts, feelings, and behaviors or external. So let's just say that I have a plan that I start out thinking, well, you know, I don't want to get angry. I don't want to be angry. I start off with that. Like I have one good friend who's really angry about something. Something happened a couple years ago, and she's really angry about it. And her whole focus is, I want to stop being angry. I want to stop being angry. So I'm going to say, okay, what do you want instead? What do you want instead of anger? Well, okay, I'd like peace. All right. Okay, is that under your control? Yes. So let's say it's a year from now and you've achieved peace. What are you going to be thinking? What are you going to be feeling? What are you going to be doing? Well, let's see. What would I be doing? I'd be talking about the thing that had made me, remember it's a year from now, so I'm going to talk about in the past tense. I'd be talking about the thing that had made me angry in a detached way. I'd be talking about it just factually without getting emotional about it. And I would be spending my time talking about and doing things not related to it. How would I be feeling? I'd be feeling joy in the moment. I'd be feeling a sense of anticipation as to how Krishna was going to work in my life. I'd be feeling a sense of compassion toward the people that had done the thing that upset me. I'd be feeling confidence that Krishna takes care of everything and that everything works for the good. I'd be feeling gratitude for the good things that Krishna has given me in my life. Then what would I be thinking? I'd be thinking, you know, well, all these emotions come and go, but I'm the soul. I'm not really part of these different emotions. They're just part of the body. They're just part of the mind. I don't have to be attached to them. I don't have to be adverse to them. I can let them go. And when I feel anger moving through me, I can just watch it move through me rather than identifying with it. So these are the things that I could be thinking, feeling, and doing. Or if I say, so a lot of you have very, very vague plans, but even those you had a specific plan, like one of you had a plan that you were going to get your job done before work. So that's already that's a beautiful plan because it's a very specific outcome. So you know if you've achieved it or not, bam. However, you still want to look at this thinking, feeling, and doing. So if I'm going to get my job done before work, you know, what would I be doing? Well, let's see, theoretically, I mean, I don't know your personal life, so this is speaking theoretically. I might say, make sure that I was in bed by 9 o'clock. I might set my alarm for 3:30. I might make sure that I knew what I was going to cook the night before. I made sure that I had the ingredients the night before, whatever other kinds of things I was doing before work. You know, if I was preparing breakfast, if I was preparing a lunch that I was going to take with me, I might say, you know, or I might plan out maybe on the weekend, I would plan out the menus for the week. I'd say, okay, well, every weekend I'm going to plan my menus for the whole week. I'm going to make sure that I have all the ingredients that I need. I'm going to set it all up so that I can have as much time as possible in the morning. So those are the things I would be doing. You know, maybe I would do some other things. Maybe I'd say, I'm only going to turn on my phone after I finished all my rounds. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I'm going to leave my phone in airplane mode until I finish my rounds. So I might have that kind of a procedure. As to what are the things that I would be doing? Okay, then what would I be thinking? I might be thinking, well, I'm really, really lucky to know about japa. I'm really, really lucky to know about the holy name. I might be thinking, when I chant my rounds nicely before I go to work, my whole day is more peaceful. I have I have an increase in energy. I have an increase in focus. I have an increase in remembrance of Krishna. My day goes so much better. And on the negative side, I don't come home exhausted and then just think, oh, I have rounds to chant. So when I chant my rounds before work, I have an anticipatory, exhilarating, exciting, enthused feeling about my job. And when I have to chant my job after work, it becomes more of a chore and I'm tired. And so I know I want to give that quality time to Krishna. That could be something you're thinking. Again, I'm just putting out possibilities here. And then feeling, I could feel enthused, I could feel anticipatory, I could feel grateful, I could feel humbled that I struggled to chant my rounds before work and get a mood of praying to Krishna. So those are samples that even if you have a plan that appears to already be very specific, and even if your plan for exercising is, I am going to run 2 miles every day between 5 and 7, that still to be specific about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors makes it much, much more likely that you're going to get it done. I'll tell you something that was just going on with me in my life. So I have this project that I need to do, and it's a little funny because it was a project that originally I needed to get done by the end of April because other people were going to use it by June. Well, they're not going to use it by June because of the pandemic. And so instead of starting to work on it April 1st, I was just kind of looking at it. And every day I was feeling guilt and anxiety and self-reproach that, oh, another day's gone by. Well, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. And then I started looking at this thinking, feeling, and willing. And I started thinking, I'm so lucky to be able to work on this project. It's a project that uses my talents. It's a project that uses things that I really enjoy. It's doing something that's of value to the devotees, that's a value to the society. I'm really, really lucky that Krishna's given me this opportunity. And I would say that to myself as soon as I woke up in the morning. I'd say, I'm really, really lucky that I'm going to work on this. And I'd start feeling a sense of anticipation, a sense of enthusiasm. And I said, what am I going to do? Well, and I had to do that for a few days even before I did anything. And then finally I said, okay, what specific thing am I going to do? Well, let's see. I'm going to open up this file, and I'm going to make this change. And I made it, I really had a sense of what I would be doing. And then I was able to work to the plan. Okay, this is going to take a little bit more time. Everyone, please take your plan and make it specific in terms of thinking, feeling, and willing. And again, we're going to ask anyone who's willing to, if your plan is personal, you don't want to share, that's fine. But if you're willing to, if you would please share in the chat box. So in the chat box, write your main plan, which you've already written, and then specific thinking, feeling, and willing. And we're going to give you about 5 minutes for this. I'm looking for a file with motion vocabulary that I can send to everybody. One second, Chris, I'm trying to find this file. Okay, so I just sent everyone a file that has a list of different feelings. I don't know, I sent the file to everyone. It's called Awareness of Feelings PDF. I put it in the chat window. I don't really know how this works other than that. So maybe whoever is the organizer, I mean, I can see it in my chat window that I've sent it to everyone. It says Awareness of Feelings PDF. Okay, good. It's right in the chat window. Okay. Again, you know, we could spend a whole weekend on this, but we're going to move on. So we're going to move on to step 4. Step 4 is when and where do we want it, or when do we not want it? And here we're going to be specific about more time, place, and circumstance. So you could say, I want to eat healthy food, but do we want to eat healthy food all the time? I mean, maybe when it's somebody's birthday party, I'm not going to care about eating healthy food, and I'm just going to eat the cake with icing, and I'm going to eat the ice cream. And my favorite story about when we want and when we don't want something, this is a true story. So we were running a school, actually right here in North Carolina, where I am now. And in the United States, schools do not have to pay taxes. So normally you have a property and you have to pay taxes on your property, but because it was a school, we did not have to pay taxes on the property. So we had a new tax collector come in, and he decided that he was going to collect taxes from people who hadn't already paid their taxes, and he was going to target schools and churches and places like that. So he came to our school and said, you guys got to start paying property taxes. We said, no, we don't, because legally a school doesn't have to pay property taxes. And he said, well, you have people living on the property, which there was nothing in the laws about people living on the property or people not living on the property. But he just said, I've decided that since you have people living on the school property, therefore you have to pay taxes, because then it's a residence, it's not just a school. So his assistant one time came on the property, and it just kind of showed up and talked to the devotee who was the principal of the school, the head teacher of the school. And he asked the devotee who was in charge of the school, do you live here? And he said, yes, I do. He said, what's your job? And he said, I'm the custodian. Now, custodian means you're like the cleaner, you're like the janitor, you're like the maintenance man. And he said that to be humble, to say, well, I'm just the servant. So we had been able to convince the people in the county office that we should be allowed to have teachers and managers live on the property. But when we went to the court hearing, the assistant stands up and said, well, I asked this gentleman, what's his job? And he said he was the custodian. And, then they asked that devotee, is that what you said your job is? And he said, yes, sir. They said, okay, now you have to pay taxes. We lost the case. We had to pay $700 in taxes. Fortunately, we made an appeal. We were able to win on the appeal, and we didn't have to pay taxes again. But it just wasn't the right time to be humble. Another example is when I first moved in the temple ashram, and my mother went to the temple president after like a month or two of my living there. She visited, she went to the temple president, and she said, what are your qualifications for being temple president? And again, trying to be humble, he said, I have no qualifications. My spiritual master just asked me to do this. So for somebody living in normal material life, that would be an odd answer. If you went to the president of a bank and you said, what are your qualifications for being president of the bank? He would tell you. He said, well, I got an MBA, I'm a certified public accountant, and I had 20 years of working in the bank, right? So for the next 10 years, my mother had a criticism of ISKCON. She would say, your managers aren't qualified. She'd say, your managers admit that they're not qualified. So there are certain things that we may want to do in some circumstances and not in others. So we want to be very specific as to the time, place, and circumstance. Now, you got some specificity with your plan in the previous step when you talked about what you'd be doing. So now we want to make it even more specific. So like, I want to get my japa done before work. Well, what about on the weekend? Then what are you going to do? I want to be happy with myself. Well, what does that mean? Suppose I do something that's really bad. Suppose I yell at and insult somebody that I love because I'm upset or I had a hard day. What am I going to do in that kind of circumstance? Am I still going to have the same thoughts, feelings, and actions to feel happy and authentic with myself when I do something that disappoints myself? What am I going to do then? So some specificity as to the time, place, and circumstance. Am I going to exercise in the morning? Am I going to exercise in the evening? Am I going to exercise when I have to be at work at 6 in the so in the previous one, you were thinking about what exercises would I do? Would I be doing walking? Would I be running? Maybe I'd go to the gym. Do I work out at my house? And here we're going to get much more specific. What are the time, place, and circumstances? So please take a couple minutes and do this. And anybody, again, who wants to share this in the chat window, you can do that.
Mother Urmila, are you able to go back to the previous slide, please? For, I think you cited a few examples there. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye-bye and Hare Krishna Mataji.
So we're going to go on to the last step. Step 5. How does your plan fit with your life? So this is looking holistically. This is looking holistically. So here's somebody who didn't really have a plan that fit with his life. You know, if someone says, well, I want to spend 2 hours a day reading, but they already work 10 hours a day and have 3 young children, then they might not have 2 hours a day to sit down and read. So when we ask this question about being holistic, we're asking, what is the cost? So we should assume that any plan that we want to put into effect has some kind of cost, some kind of price, some kinds of costs. And we should also assume that there's some reason we haven't done it already. So one way to find the block, first of all, we assume that there is some block or some negative consequences that are there in the plan, or we would already have done it. And that may not always be true, but often it's true. And we can ask ourselves, what's stopping me from doing it right now? What's stopping it? What's stopping me? And again, if we were all in the same room and we could have partners, that's what we'd be asking each other. What's stopping you? What's stopping you? What will it cost you? Now, maybe it won't cost you anything in your relationships, but it's a question to ask. Will it cost me something in my relationships? Will it cost me something in my lifestyle? What effect is it going to have in my life? These are the questions to ask to make sure that our plan is in harmony with our life. And the main thing we're trying to ensure here is that it's a cost that I am happily willing to pay, that it's a cost that I'm happily willing to pay. Because if it's not a cost that I'm happily willing to pay, then we have to step back a bit and make a plan to get to that plan. Then we have to go back from our plan and go, oh, there's something else I need to take care of first. Before I can do that plan, I was too ambitious. I was aiming too high. I was aiming for a step that I'm not ready to take. Okay? So in this case, I don't want you to write anything in the chat window. This is just for yourself. Take a couple of minutes, go through this, and ask yourself, what is the cost? What's stopping me? Is it a cost I'm willing to pay? In some cases, you look at it and go, hey, you know, it's really fine. It's not a big deal. But in other cases, it's like, whoa, you know, I don't know if that's something that I really want to deal with. So just take a couple minutes to think about that. So we want to make sure the plan's in harmony with our life. Many, many times, the reason a plan doesn't work is that there's other things going on in our life that oppose it, or that don't support it, or we're not really willing to pay the price. And we haven't been honest with ourselves about that. We haven't been honest with ourselves about the real price. Okay, so as a review, the 5 parts to having plans that work, stated in the positive, within our control or influence, being specific as to what we will do, what we will think, how we will feel, specific as to time, place, and circumstance, and in harmony with life. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about this and to teach this. This is a real game changer in life. It's the kind of thing that when you practice it will not only affect your life, but how you deal with others. Yeah, okay, what you're saying, Chris, there is, yeah, this is a very good thing. Then now you step back and you say, okay, before I can make a plan to write, maybe I need to make a plan to get training. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happens in this 5th step, that sometimes you go, you know, that cost really isn't very much and I really am willing to pay it and let's go for it. Or, you know, and other times you go, whoa, there is something else I need to attend to first, or I need to change my plan. I need to scale it down, or I need to scale it differently, or, you know, I need to have it in another, I need to change something. I need to change the thoughts or the feelings or the behavior or the time, the place, there's something I need to go back and tweak. You go back and you tweak that, and then you go to the cost, then you go to the harmony, and you see if that works. Okay, I do have another call that I have to make now, so I will beg your leave that I need to go. Again, thank you very much for this wonderful travel to South Africa, and I'm so thrilled that I've been teaching classes over Zoom now just for a couple weeks, like everybody else. But this is the first time I've really made a lot of use of the chat in that way for something that's normally a workshop. And this was a learning experience for me about how I could try to do a workshop over Zoom with so many people without having everybody use their mic and kind of taking over. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you so much, Urmila Prabhu, for spending this time with us. And yes, we'll let you go to your next meeting. Thank you everyone for joining us also. It was such a deep session, and you could see it was very shifting for people. People were really like going in and finding what they wanted to improve. So that's awesome. It also means you got things to take away with you. It's like your retreat gift pack. So thank you for that. It is 9:41 here in South Africa. So thank you everyone, and we will catch you tomorrow's session tomorrow for yoga with Karinda at 10 a.m. Otherwise, have a great nap, a sleep, and tomorrow is another day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.